Now, here in the UK, paying for a prostitute isn't illegal, but soliciting, curb crawling and running a brothel are. Our laws are increasingly out of step with the rest of Europe, with more countries like France and Northern Ireland following the example of Sweden. It changed its laws back in 1998. It's said to have cut street prostitution by 2/3. Even countries like the Netherlands and Germany, where prostitution has been legal for a number of years, well, they're becoming increasingly disillusioned with that position. They're considering tightening their laws too. It all means the UK could be out of step with the rest of Europe, and a number of MPs, peers and women's groups say Britain could become a magnet for prostitution unless we change our laws too. It could put pressure on Theresa May to tighten prostitution laws as part of the government's human trafficking bill due to be published later this month. But senior police officers are already warning any change in the law would be difficult to enforce. I'm joined now by the Labour MEP, Mary Honeyball, who wants the UK to follow the rest of Europe in changing our laws, and by Charlie Daniels, former sex worker who wrote a book on her experiences. Welcome to both of you. Mary Honeyball, let me come to you first. The police chief in charge of dealing with prostitution in England and Wales says changing the law to prosecute those buying sex will, quote, drive prostitutes into dark and unsafe areas of our cities.
Well, I think they already are often in dark and unsafe areas of our cities. And, of course, the police will have a perspective on this. But the point is that I believe, and as you said in the introduction, a lot of other European governments now believe that we should be looking at reducing prostitution and at the same time reducing human trafficking, which is very closely linked to it, because an awful lot, some statistics say as much as 90% of those women who work in prostitution, who are prostituted, have actually been trafficked. So,
prostitution and trafficking, of course they're connected, but they're also two separate issues, aren't they? I mean, trafficking is illegal anyway. Prostitution's a different set of laws that we deal with. We have the power at the moment to deal with trafficking if we choose to do so. You're wanting to change the law on prostitution.
Well, there's good evidence from Sweden, where they've had this law since 1996, that if you criminalise the buyer, which in most cases is a man, the number of trafficked women will actually go down.
Well, the evidence is that they're off the streets. There's evidence that they could have gone elsewhere.
Well, they could have gone elsewhere, and the other places they...
The Danish looked at this, and they're not so keen on this now.
No, but the point you were making about the police officer who made those comments, it's the streets that are the dark and dangerous places.
Right. Let me bring Charlie Daniels in here. What's your attitude to this?
I'm not a former sex worker. I'm actually a current sex worker.
All right. So what's your attitude to it?
I defend the right of any woman who chooses to sell her body behind closed doors, causing no other illegal issues to do so.
That's fine, but what I'm asking you is what's your attitude to the changes that Mary wants to see?
I'm really sorry, but I'm jaded with this argument. I've had 20 years of people suggesting decriminalisation, legalisation, changing this law, changing that law. There's actually an obvious solution, but it doesn't fit the bill for politicians. Positive intervention with young people in care. 90% of all young people in care who are in youth institute, offenders institutes, people in prison, and the street girls, because these are the women that are most vulnerable, have spent some time in care. We need to be preventing, not curing.
All right, but can I just clarify, try for a third time, are you against criminalising those who pay for sex?
I am definitely against the criminalisation of clients for the indoor markets. I do feel that there might be some discussion that's feasible for those women that work on the streets, because the clients who are outdoors have no reason to be. These are the clients who want a woman without a condom. These are the clients who want to kill women. These are the clients that want the woman in the vulnerable situation in the first place. Okay. I think there's no room for those clients.
Mary Honeyball, how would you enforce this if you were to criminalise the client? After all, in the end, this is an act between two people. There's money involved, but there has to be a degree of consent involved as well. If neither of them is prepared to admit to money passing hands, how would you enforce it?
Well, it obviously is being enforced in Sweden, so there are lessons to be learned from that. And also, a lot of street prostitution. I mean, I totally take what Charlie is saying about sex workers who work indoors. I think maybe that is a different market. But certainly in street prostitution, there is a lot of violence. There is a lot of rape and a lot of violence involved. So there are crimes continually being committed. And also, if you look also at the trafficking side of it, that's a crime as well, as you so rightly point out. So there is a huge amount of criminal behaviour happening, which is already prosecuted. In a sense, the criminalising the buyer is just part of that package, and the police certainly managed to deal with the other bits of it all right. So I think this is a little bit of the police creating some difficulties there which need not necessarily be there.
Okay. Forgive me, because I know we both have some common ground here. Don't you think that if we strip all this back and look at what's important, the women who were exploited, the women who were groomed, the women who were trafficked, the women who were raped, the women who were abused, we don't seem to be concentrating on those. There's a strong core of lobbyists who are feminists. Forgive me for saying, you said on your own blog, I've read it, that you don't find the sale of sex acceptable. So the problem is while ever the debate's over to that, I'm not looking at these really serious issues. We're not dealing with these issues. Trafficking is a problem that's happened with immigration. Trafficking is already here. Women from other countries are already here, and they're here for commercial reasons because of the pound and the euro. There's not going to be a big rush, very similar to what you were saying earlier. Where's the proof there's going to be a big rush? They're here. They've quadrupled in numbers in the last 10 years because of lax immigration issues.
You've got to let Mary respond to that.
Yeah, a lot of that is right, and obviously that concerns me. And you are also right to say that I don't actually think it is right that women should be able to sell their bodies. I mean, I come at it from that perspective because I think it is very unequal.
You don't want to criminalise that. Can I clarify? Do you?
I don't. I mean, that's why.
But
that's
why would you
why
criminalise my clients if I choose to sell my body? Why would you have my clients criminalised?
Because I do think there's a big issue which we as a society need to tackle here, and that is that prostitution in any society which allows women or to sell their bodies actually it actually makes women unequal. It is an unequal relationship.
I think you're taking away a woman's choice. You know what? I don't ask for the vote. I've never voted in my life. But I do ask you, please, respect the fact that I choose to sell my body, and there are thousands of women who do.
Let me bring Carla in here. What's your view? You've been listening to this.
I'm finding it fascinating. We were talking earlier before the show started about what side of the argument I was on, and I find I'm on both sides. I know, I'm sorry.
That's very Huffington Post.
I'm not helping you with
nowhere.
This.
Is it? But on the one hand, on the other hand, on the one hand.
I think women need to be protected, and I'm terrified that if you criminalise this further, that it will force people down those alleyways. It's the oldest profession in the books. I think men will always find a way to pay for sex, and if we criminalise it, are we going to put more women at risk?
What would, if you got your way, what would happen to the porn industry? Because that involves people paying for sex.
It's very closely linked, and I think it's part of the whole question. I wouldn't necessarily advocate looking at that at the moment while we're dealing with prostitution.
No, but it involves a payment. It involves
a lot of women in porn are actually selling their bodies on the side.
They are, I know. So and also the thing about the porn industry
would you want to ban that?
Well, I think we do need to look at it more closely than we are, because there's a lot of evidence coming out that teenagers who look at porn, and it's very easy for them to do it now, actually get very unrealistic expectations.
Oh, no, I understand that, but that's
actually, I
another
agree with
issue.
you. I've seen it with the younger clients. And we do need to educate men about sex, and we do need to educate men about respecting women.
You've seen the impact of younger people looking at porn.
Absolutely. I've had younger clients who think that it's appropriate to spit on someone because they've seen that on a movie. Completely inappropriate. But at the end of the day, what we've got to do is protect the vulnerable women that are in the industry. And while ever the feminists hijack this debate, then we're not going to be able to do that.
I completely agree with you about vulnerable women, absolutely. And I've talked to quite a lot of survivors, most of whom have come from that sort of background, have come from care and are poor and exploited.
We
absolutely need to protect
I came from care, but I now choose to do this, Mary. Respect that decision.
Thank you both.
Thank you.